It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. Take Command Podcast. Craig Hoffman here. Logan Paulsen there. I'm back in D.C. Very happy to be here because that means all the things I had to take care of went very well. And I'm back like 3 days early, Logan. Haven't had a chance to be out to Ashburn yet, but we're now 6 practices deep as we record Tuesday morning. It's about 10:20 a.m. Logan fresh off the practice field in Ashburn. And since we last recorded a show, Logan, there's been a rather large development. There's been a certain fella who showed up at out there in Ashburn. Terry McLaurin is back. We're going to start the show talking to him. No, it'd be cool if we were talking to him. We're not going to talk to him. We're going to talk about him. And then we are going to get into practice. But how you feeling 6 days in? Just generally feeling. Does it feel like football again?
Oh yeah, it does feel like football. You know, like it's just I just love seeing the process. I love seeing Dan Quinn's process, love seeing the staff's process, how they work through stuff. Like some of the things we talked about in the last show, just how those storylines have developed and matriculated over the last couple of days. And then the other thing like that was really cool, big event for us in the Command Center podcast, Command Center show world, is Santana Moss is getting inducted into the Ring of Fame or whatever, which is really excited. Couldn't happen to a better guy. And so that's been a big part of my life the last couple of days, because seeing him
audible. This wasn't on the rundown, but I actually would like to talk about this, and maybe we can have Tana on. Like he's someone that either of us could text easily and be like, "Hey, dude, you want to come on?" But like, I worked with Tana back in 2016. Like one of my big first things I did for 106.7 The Fan was host the Santana Moss show. So I know him a little bit and wound up doing a lot of bigger deep dive into his career around that. But like you work with him every day now and you play with him, so pick up from there.
Yeah, no, and again, like it was something like he's such a funny guy, man, in the sense that like he's the coolest dude you've ever been around. He's very gracious, he's very kind, but like, and he has this aura of a guy that, you know, he doesn't come across as a guy that played for as long as he did and did what he did in terms of accolades. And so like, and he doesn't really talk about his career that much, you know what I mean? In terms of like, this is how many yards I had, this is how many touchdowns I had, this is what I deserve. And so I think it was really cool for me to see him, I don't know, get this recognition and to see his emotional reaction to it. Like he said multiple times on the show, like he was like, felt like he was going to cry, because it was like, it's as a player, and we were talking on one of our other shows about this, like as a player, your goal is to leave a mark on something, right? And so, you know, I played for 10 years, you know, Fred played for 9, a lot of guys, you know, thousands of guys play for a long time, and you never really remember their career doesn't have any impact. And so for Tana to get this acknowledgement of the impact that his career had on the organization, and to see really the fandom and how they react to him, you know, like that he was the guy for a generation, for a decade of Commanders fans, Redskin fans, Washington football team fans, I think is really cool. And so like to see the outpouring of support from the team, to see the outpouring of support from the fans, I think is really cool. And I think it's cool that the team is kind of going and like retroactively finding these guys that deserve these opportunities. You know, like we've been promoting B. Mitch for the Hall of Fame, London Fletcher for the Hall of Fame, Joe Jacoby. Like this is something we weren't doing before, and now to see some of that stuff come to light is really cool, and it couldn't be happening for a better human being.
Yeah, I am such a big Santana fan, and I used to joke with him. So my favorite player growing up was an undersized receiver who was scrappy and tough and fast and physical, who wore number 89, and it was Steve Smith. Because I grew up in the Carolinas, and that was like my team. But because of that, like the fact that there was this guy in Washington who similar size, they're different players, obviously, and I've grown to appreciate how different they were as I've gotten older. But like as a 8 to 15-year-old or whatever the ages I was when they were doing their thing. They were just like two smaller, scrappy dudes who fought like hell, that were awesome, that wore the same number and had similar builds and or similar heights at least. And I always had an eye on Tana, and just the electricity that he brought. I always just really appreciated that, even as a kid. Nevertheless, as I got older and more advanced as a football fan, and now having the chance when I worked with him to look back, and we used to do like story time with Tana, some of the stuff he has from Miami, obviously on those epic teams, some of the stuff he went through with the Jets, like just unbelievable stories. And that was my favorite thing about working with him, is just he's an incredible storyteller. But he also has the stories because he was there and he was that freaking guy. Like he was so good. I mean, that what was it? 05, I think, was his 1,400 yard season. I mean, just like one of the all time great receiving seasons in NFL history. and he played with basically a different quarterback every year. Had he had a guy for even half of his career, I think he's probably being considered for the Hall of Fame. Like, he was a Hall of Fame caliber player that is stuck, quote unquote, big air quotes there, in just the ring of fame because he played a dependent position where the position he was dependent on wasn't always very good and mostly was actually pretty bad. So the fact that he was able to do what he did despite the circumstances just is a testament to how great he was. He deserves this 100 times over. And I was really, really thrilled to see it. Just the announcement. And then I saw you guys crash the set and how cool is it, by the way, that B Mitch is the one to tell him. And I loved B Mitch's phrasing. You're coming up. He's like, hey, I'm up here. You're coming to join me. Welcome, partner. And like they've just started doing with the Hall of Fame, where like you get the knock at the door and it's someone who's already in wearing their gold jacket being like, here's yours. So I love that. I loved everything about it. This ownership group deserves a ton of credit for how they've handled, like you said, all of the history they're trying to reclaim and re-elevate. And, Santana more than deserving of this honor.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you said the ownership too, because that's them. Like, they flew family up, they flew friends up, they made that happen. They made that moment happen for him. And under past ownership, like, we talk about things that were messed up, and things like this were messed up all the time. And so like making the moment feel the way it should feel, I think people deserve a lot of credit for that, which is pretty exciting. So, you mentioned like kind of your history with Santana, like growing up watching him. And I remember in 2010, Kyle Shanahan had a cut up of Santana Moss. I always watched him from afar. I'm an LA kid watching out here. And I was always a fan of his, but like Kyle Shanahan was sitting in the meeting. One of the guys I respect most from a football standpoint, like ever, goes like, my favorite receiver growing up was Santana Moss. And like, here's a cut up of him running a play we're installing today. And it was like, and I just was like, oh my God, like how cool is this? That this coach,
Santana's sitting there in the meeting.
Yeah. Like this coach is fanboying over Santana. We're watching clips of Santana who's sitting right here, who's balling out on this field. And he was in year like 11 at that point, but it was just like, he's a special person, special player, and he deserves the opportunity for sure.
He's also a guy that, had he played in this era, would have been a destroyer of worlds.
Oh,
like,
my God.
He was so far ahead of his time from a skill set standpoint. Like, some of these playmakers in space, kind of like the creative ways that you get guys like that the ball. Or honestly, like, I think the best era for Santana would have been like if he was Tom Brady's slot receiver. He'd be considered the greatest receiver of all time. Like the stuff that like Wes Welker was super special. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, Wes Welker is an awesome player, but like the stuff Santana could do, and that's the thing, is like Kyle eventually put him in the slot, and it extended Santana's talked about it. Like, it extended his career. But like, here's a dude who's like 5'9", whatever he is, 5'10", playing outside, putting up 1,400 yards without being moved around, without being made the kind of weapon that he was capable of being in a modern NFL offense. Man, if he could have played an era or two eras later with the creativity that we have in this league now, whew.
It's scary. It's quite honestly scary to think about, like just how good he could have been. Like, because he was kind of playing left-handed when he was playing outside all the time, and was still dominant. And could you imagine if like he was in like a Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan offense where we're just moving around the formation, we're using motion and shifts to get him favor? Like, are you kidding me? Like, so yeah, man. It's like you said, it's in some ways it's sad that he's not going to get the Hall of Fame kind of acknowledgement because of the quarterbacks, because of the offensive situation here. But at least he's getting this, and this is a pretty special honor, and he's really excited about it, so that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. And those of us that saw it, those of us that have been around it, like that's the fun part about doing this, is you get to continue to keep the legacies of those players alive. That when the kids come up and like, oh no, this is the greatest, that you're like, you should have seen what 89 could do back in the day, which is fun and also means we're getting old. All right, from the best receiver of that era to undoubtedly the best receiver of this one, who has shown up. Terry is there now. And he obviously rave reviews or rave reception from fans. Pretty smart on the PR publicity side of it, if you're fighting that war, to show up on the day that camp comes open to fans. Obviously, teammates getting involved too. Jaden on SportsCenter doing the Terry chants. But then you have this report from Adam Schefter yesterday that's like he's asking for more than DK Metcalf, and maybe significantly more, which to me means probably like if DK's, and if he's basing it off that 33 AAV number, average annual value number, that's looking at $34-35 million a year. There is no way he's getting that from the Commanders. So while the feels are good that Terry is there, the feels are bad on the contract actually getting done here. So where does that leave us with our feels, Logan?
Yeah. So, I mean, I honestly, like, I was like, oh, Terry's in the, because like in 2017, 2018, whatever season that was, like Julio did like a hold in, and, they were working an extension. So he's around, but like, it always felt like it was progressing because he was in the building, right? He was there. So like, you're like, okay, great. Like he's here. He must be getting close to something. So when he showed up, I was like, oh, this is great. They must be getting close to a number that they're both excited about. And obviously the report comes out. I just was like, man, like, I don't want to comment on what Terry's worth, because emotionally to fans, he's worth something, but the play on the field, the age, that's worth something different. But I was like, they're going to be very far apart if that's what he's actually asking for. And the distance between the two numbers is a little bit unnerving, right? And I think that's something that I kind of went in, what was that, Sunday, where I was like, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to be close. They're going to make an announcement.
Yeah.
And then I was like, ooh, after that report, it's like just understanding kind of where he's at, the other receivers that are making a lot of money. Like, I don't think the team and him are as close as I was hoping. And Scheffner reported that. He said they're right, kind of far
exactly.
off. So,
exactly. And this is where the agent becomes so important, because hearing about the DK number, we both talked about this. Like I think you were the first one who was like, this is going to become a problem. And I was like, I'd hope not. I guess I have more faith in kind of the information getting to Terry to be like, that number's fake. And like, I don't need to go over it again, but just in case someone is tuning in for the first time, the short version is DK signed like a 4-year deal that in the last year has a ton of money in it that is non-guaranteed. That is the money that is bringing the average up to 33. Realistically, he signed a 2-year, $60 million deal. He's right on 30 in terms of the guaranteed money. And there's a chance he gets into year 3 of that contract. There is zero chance that DK Metcalf is playing on the cap, unless the cap mega explodes and DK has 3 straight career years. Then the Steelers will be like, fine, we'll let you play out this last year. But it's like literally, I think it's almost $40 million of a cap hit that year, Logan. Like that's how much the inflation is on the back end of that contract to make it look like whatever DK wanted on paper. But if you're Terry's agent, you just have to be like, hey man, that's not the number we're concerned with. See this column, see the guaranteed at signing column, see the real like guarantees column, which I think for DK is the same number. Like I think he got some of the highest guaranteed at signing, but there's basically no additional guarantees in the contract, the practical guarantees, if you will. Like those numbers for DK are not that hard to beat and can be done in the first 2 years basically of the contract. Certainly with a little bit put into year 3 if you don't want to extend that much further if you're the team. But trying to beat that 33 number, like you're going to have fake years at the end. And I guess like if they wanted to, they could. They like I know we talked a lot about Jaden's extension and even needing to have the room, but like the cap numbers and extensions are lower in the first year. So like you have time if you wanted to do that, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. Just like get your money now. Let's get going and like, let's do this thing. And Terry's in a bad spot to negotiate from outside. Like Terry is 100% has 100% support on the sentimental side. He's the best receiver recently, all the stuff he's been through, captain, done everything you want. Like from a storytelling standpoint, it's very easy to just be like, pay Terry. If I'm being a cold hard businessman, I go, you're under contract for this year. Like your money's not guaranteed, but like if you play, like we're going to pay you that money, maybe even be willing to guarantee it. And then we can just tag you next year and still be paying you less than what you're asking for at the 34 or 35 number. So why would we do that? And like that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where like I've said this before. I have tremendous empathy for Terry. Like ultimately in the league, you want to get paid what you feel like you're worth. Sometimes that doesn't always work out. Doesn't always jive. And again, like I know I've negotiated with Adam. I've talked to Adam. I think he's a great person, right? And so like this is like kind of the shady side, not the shady side, but like the darker side of NFL business, right? Like you have two kind of opposing goals. And the one thing I will say is like based on what you laid out there, which I think is a great, for fans to understand the contract landscape, right? Someone is giving him not great advice, Terry. Right. I truly believe that because I think if he understood what the deal actually looked like, what the numbers actually were, I think he'd have more clarity on what a quote unquote good deal for Terry would be. And so again, like, I'm not going to tell Terry he should do anything differently than he's doing. I'm not going to tell Adam to do anything differently than he's doing. But like, it does feel to me as a former player who has some contract experience that like he's just not getting realistic advice. Let's just say that. And I don't know who's telling him that, right? I'm not saying that's the agent's fault either, but like, it does seem like he's getting bad advice somewhere up the chain.
Yeah, for sure. Again, just to kind of run through the market, average annual value, DK is getting the fourth most money behind CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. When you look at the guaranteed,
like, he's not in that zip code. Like, as a player, he's not in that zip code. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's an unrealistic, like, I don't know, man. Like, I know you've done a great job explaining. It's a bad deal. If that's the marker you're using, it's a bad deal to use. Right. Like, it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? So anyway,
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
He's also the fourth highest guaranteed at signing with 60, but the practical guarantees on DK's contract, he is all the way down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th.
Yeah.
And Garrett Wilson, I believe, is the only guy on this list, who has signed this year. So it's not like he just got passed by a bunch of dudes.
Right.
Like, that's... Yeah. And by the way, Terry seems to value those numbers because he's 2 players down. It's Tyreek and then Terry's last contract. So like, Terry should understand the value of practical guarantees here. And if you wanted to get above DK at 60, you have a ton of room between the 60 there and the Ayuk at 76. So like, if you want to get to 65 in practical guarantees with 61 at signing, you could be ahead of DK in those 2 facets without having to do a 33 AAV over 4 years and 132 theoretical value, which is what DK's number is. And again, like, we're not going to see that. So that's kind of the state of play. It is, again, the feels were nice when Terry showed up. The reporting killed the feels. We'll continue to monitor. But there is also a football reality that is playing out on the field with, the offense struggling a little bit here in camp, specifically against man coverage. So let's get into the football, Logan.
Yeah, let's do it.
Take Command Podcast. That's Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. And the offense not having the best training camp so far, Logan. We did talk last time about why some of that tends to happen across the league early on in camp. Defenses get installed at a faster rate. Some of the stuff that defenses install early requires more specific game plan or even just specific base levels to be able to compete against at a high level. And that's later in the offensive install. But I think one of the things that's been interesting so far that you and I have been talking about is you've been keeping me abreast of what's going on and also following along, all the reporters and everybody that's out there, is the defense is playing a ton of man coverage and the offense is specifically struggling with that. And I think that's really interesting because I expect to see that. And, Terry, part of this aside for a second, I expect to see that a lot this year. Because of some of the numbers that we saw last year, and I can get into those in a second. But just observationally, like, what do you see of this kind of in the passing game, offense-defense matchup, and why the defense has seemingly found more success, assuming you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think the defense is doing a great job. I think we've talked about,
and that's part of it too, right? Like, our guys just in phase all the time, doing a great job.
Yeah, Will Harris, like Trey Amos today had a great PBU. You see his experience, you see his length. So I want to make sure that we're giving those guys credit. But I will say, like, one of the things that this offense did so well last year is they did a really good job of isolating matchups versus man-to-man coverage and basically taking advantage of that, right? So like, one of the statistics that come to mind for me is like last year, they were 4th or 3rd in explosive plays over 50 yards. So if you think about those and you sort those and you watch them, it's like explosive play to Diami on a go, right? Explosive play to Terry on a go. There's OZ behind the defense on a go, right? And they did a great job of cultivating that. And Jaden Daniels, like, one of his superpowers is throwing one of the best kind of, box fade, deep ball, go kind of high trajectory balls that I've ever seen, right? So what I would say is that, like, now that the defensive coverage is getting better and those opportunities are becoming lower percentage, the offensive efficiency seems to be decreasing. So that's what I'm kind of being aware of when I watch practice. Is like, oh, it's single high. They're getting press man on the single receiver side. This is where the ball traditionally has gone. This is where the ball is going. And the coverage is better. The receivers, I will say this, also looked a little bit tired today, because like when you think about it, Noah Brown gets 2 vet days early in camp. Terry's not here. You're down bodies, so guys are taking a lot of volume in terms of reps. So they looked at times they look a little bit sluggish. And the defense, I will say this also, that the referees are letting them get away with a lot of tugs and pulls and grabs, which I like in training camp. Let's get used to that now. But again, that was something that was a very high completion percentage for this team last year. And now it feels like it's kind of normalized a little bit. And when it's normalized, it goes from, let's say, 55% to 35%. That's going to feel very distinctly different when it comes to offensive football. So there's that element of it. And then there's also the element of the line play, which we'll talk about here more in a second.
Yeah, I mean, the referee stuff is always something that I try to remind myself of in training camp, where it's like, man, defense is dominant. Then you get out there in the first preseason game and there's 78 flags on the defense, and you're like, oh, maybe that's why the defense was so good in training camp.
They have been calling like DPI, and they have been calling stuff. But so, for example, there was a play today where, I forget who it was. I think it was Mike Sanders still on number 19. And
Chris Moore, yeah.
Yeah. So, and basically, like, Sanders still's in good coverage. There's a little tug, but I didn't think it was anything crazy. Ball is a little bit high and outside. I felt like Sanders did a good job widening, so the window is really small for Jaden to throw it into. And Moore looks to the referee. He's like, man, you're not going to call that hold? And Sanders still looks at him and says, like, don't look at the referee. Like, you got to win that route. And so, like, later in practice, there's a holding call that's called on Carlin Viggers, who I think had a decent day today, but, like, gets a holding call. So they are calling stuff. It's just, I think that the getting used to what is going to be called and what's not going to be called is also part of this process, right? And so I would always rather err if the DB's playing with good technique, which I felt like Mikey was in this situation. Marshawn Lattimore had one later, which again, I felt like it was good. Like there was a competitive amount of contact, nothing too crazy, nothing too light. It was kind of in that Goldilocks zone. Like, let the boys play, right? That's what because he's using good technique. The receiver's using good technique. Let's see if we can complete this football and make this happen. And so that's where I'd say, like, they are calling stuff. Like, I think it was 2 days ago, there was a bunch of DPI, right? Like Tyler Owens had a couple, like Carlin Viggers had one. Like there was a bunch, but today I thought pretty clean. So I think it's an evolution by the defense, and it's just the offense just a little bit off. And again, like these pass plays that they're trying to complete are traditionally lower percentage anyway, right? So I think that's all those things kind of factor into what's happening.
Yeah. So let's dive deeper into that, because I think some of this is like, okay, I've seen a lot of like great ball by Jaden, drop by Chris Moore. Okay, well, if that becomes Terry, or I mean, not a ton, but like I shouldn't single out Chris Moore. Drop by insert receiver here. Yeah. Right. And so if that's happening and that receiver in a game rep is going to be Terry, well, then we're talking about that percentage. Maybe it normalizes, but it's to 45% because Terry's really good at contested catches compared to all these other guys. So that is definitely part of it. I think the other question I would have is, if teams are going to play more man coverage, is that a suitable answer to just say, like, all right, we're going 3-by-1. If it's man coverage, we're going to the one side and we're throwing a go ball? Or do we trust that Cliff Kingsbury will evolve the offense and have more answers? Because I do feel like he was that was, I think, a criticism of him in Arizona, was like, it was kind of similar stuff and teams figured it out. And I feel like last year, there was talk in the middle of the season of the Cliff, and then they just went on absolute tear in December and January and were awesome, and he changed and tweaked some things and figured some things out. So how confident are we that there are more answers in the bag, especially in year 2 of this offense, with a chance for it to evolve in year 2 of the Cliff Daniels partner, the Kingsbury Daniels partnership? Yeah,
so I think that's a great point, and something we kind of touched on in terms of, like, you don't change your offensive install. You don't like match the defense. You don't game plan the defense, which I think is maybe the more important thing here, right? Is like, I've seen Cliff and the offensive staff come up with great game plans, great play design, really putting people in blenders, putting them in binds, understanding where the protection should go. And that's another element we really need to double click on here. But you don't rep it. So like if day 1 install, and we're on day 6, but like if our base install is that, hey, we're going to signal a fade and you're going to throw a fade here, that's our base install. Like, we're not going to change that, like, just because the defense is winning the day, quote unquote. Like, we're going to run it, like, because that's what we're going to do. And then when we get into more game plan specific stuff, we're playing the New York Giants, we understand what kind of coverage structures they're going to be in. Then we're going to say, hey, no, maybe we want a slant backside, or maybe we want to check to a different protection, or maybe, and you kind of layer it on because you understand the matchups better, you understand how they play their coverages better, you understand things that you've shown on tape, and you can like layer plays a little bit more. So I'm not that worried about it like long term, because I think Cliff is a great offensive mind. I think the staff that he's assembled, Tavita, Blau, like those guys are super smart. Johnson's, like, they're all smart dudes. They're going to figure it out. But as of right now, like, if the offense looks like it's struggling, it's just because they're engaging in what I would consider lower percentage opportunities.
So last year, Daniels completed 74% of his passes against zone coverage, the fourth highest rate in the NFL, but 8 touchdowns, 7 picks. Man coverage, far less percentage, high percentage on the throws, 57 to 74%, but 17 touchdowns to 2 picks. So the high risk, high reward type of stuff last year is there. I remember that stat from that existed in the playoffs. I was able to just go dig it up on NFL Pro. So, when we talk about, are we going to see a lot more man coverage and see teams take that boom or bust? Like, we're pretty sure we're not going to be the team that gives up the touchdown. That's going to be an interesting thing to follow this year. I will say it feels like Debo's name came up quite a bit today. And I think it was Ben Standig, tweeted out that, like, hey, he's having at least 1 or 2 explosive plays every single practice. So good to see him going, but none of that matters without the protection side of it. The offensive line news note of the day is Nate Erbig retired. So they signed him in the offseason. We thought he might be in the mix at right guard.
That time of year, man.
You're coming off injury. You think you want to come back. You get out there and you're like, I think I'd rather do something else with my life. I've made 5 years worth of NFL money. Let's go on to the next phase. So that's a guy that's out. I saw some stuff. Chris Paul's been rotating in with even with the ones. So that's interesting, and a guy that you kind of slot into that place that maybe we thought Erbig would be in a rotation. But no matter who's out there, how are they doing from a protection standpoint? And is it not coming together if things are not going well? Is it not having the calls in yet? What's the prognosis here?
Yeah, I just think it's the same. In this situation, I feel like it's kind of like the most extreme version of what we've been talking about. Is they're bringing a lot of pressure, kind of exotic pressures, great disguises, double A gap mug. We got, 4-man overloads. We've got all these different things. And then on top of that, there's some players kind of working through some difficult one-on-one matchups. And so you get pressure from that. But I do think one of the things is you're watching 2 Minute, for example, and they run some type of double A and there's a great disguise. You're like, oh, this is double A. Oh, it's Tampa 2. Oh, it's double A. Oh, no, it's a fire zone week. Like Kane Madrano today had a great interception where he's kind of up on the line of scrimmage. Looks like he's going to blitz. If any of you have watched his Nebraska film highlights, for example, he has an interception in that game where he's in the line of scrimmage, kind of bounces out, picks the ball off, and does a great job of disguising it. So it just, when you're watching it, they're doing a good job of being kind of what I would say Dan Quinn's defense was when he was in Dallas, where it's we're creating quick pressures, quick wins, sometimes rushing with 4 because the disguise works, or finding overloads or stunts or whatever. Most times rushing with 5 and really putting the offensive line in a tough situation where you're challenging rules a lot, And I think talking about Cliff, one of the things he did a great job of last year was coming up with great consistent protection plans. He's not going to do that now, right? So you're running this kind of versus your basic 5-man protection, your basic 6-man protection. I know how to beat that if I'm Joe Witt Jr., and I might not even be trying. I'm just installed pressures that are good. And so, again, you're getting quick pressures. The quarterback's having to make quick decisions, and the coverage in the back end, man, when you just sit back and watch the coverage, whether it's cover 2, whether it's man, whether it's some type of match coverage, they do such a good job of just taking the air out, right? There's not a lot of throwing space, right? They're playing physical. They're disrupting at the line of scrimmage. It's everything that I think, I was hoping for last year. You're starting to see shades of that now. So the protection is struggling, but I think it's also a testament to how well the defense is playing.
Yeah, which is definitely going to be interesting because I think Commanders fans are scarred from past years of, the defense is playing really well. And it's actually, some of those Rivera years, both sides of the ball just actually weren't that good. And so I think there's probably a little bit of scare of is our offense regressed? But I think that the amount of change on offense, no Terry for now, Tunsil and all the shifts across the offensive line, that takes a while to coalesce versus a defense where, you've got some new pieces for sure, but you also have a guy like Bobby in the middle, and just defense is simpler than offense. And so it's able to coalesce faster. And also these guys were all pretty much there outside of Lattimore, and even Lattimore was there some in the spring. So like they were able to get their stuff together in the spring versus Tunsil basically didn't do any teamwork in the spring. You had a bunch of other guys that were in and out of the spring. And so I think that's going to be interesting to watch them continue to come together. One last guy that I want to mention real quick, or one last thing on offense real quick. Running backs, you finally get a chance to see them because the pads are on. And it feels like Croskey, like how much of the Bill is having an awesome camp stuff is fans and media getting over their skis about a running back in camp because every run looks like a touchdown versus like, is that kid actually like showing some real pop as a 7th rounder?
I mean, I think there's a little bit of that. There's always a little bit of that. Like I was talking to B. Mitch today. He's like, I really like Bill. I like him as a player. I like what he's doing. I like his vision. I like his burst through the hole, like how he accelerates, like how hard he runs, like how he finishes. Like there's a lot of stuff to like. But I mean, you've covered the team long enough. Like you understand that like those late round backs, like they'll flash a little bit in these settings, but like
are they also messing up pass pro?
Yeah, they're messing up. Like, and again, I don't think he's messing anything up, but it's just like it's different when you put the pads on in your preseason game. You know what I mean? Like it's different. And so I think I'm excited to watch him in a preseason game. Like he's a guy that I've definitely like circled and been like, I want to see what you look like and see how you play because you've got all of these things that kind of seem to match and marry with your college film. So that's really exciting. And so like there are people like, for example, like Strachan, the receiver, number 84. Like I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. He's made some plays, missed some plays. Like he had a really awesome contested catch in like an end of game 2-minute scenario where they just kind of threw up a fade to him and he just high pointed it above everybody and made a play. So did Jalen Lane. So everyone's kind of flashed. Jacoby Brooks is another guy that's flashed. Yeah. Right. They've all kind of had their moments, but to be a good pro, it's the consistent long-term play. Right. So what does that look like moving forward? And for Bill, because you asked about him specifically, like I want to see him with pads on versus a team that's tackling him to the ground because they don't tackle to the ground anymore because that's part of keeping guys safe during training camp. So when that happens, I'll give you how I actually feel about him. But right now, yes, good vision, good burst, good finish, love all that stuff. It's just, I want to see the real deal.
I feel like the maximum amount of excitement for a running back is what you have. Yeah. I want to see him. I can't wait to see him. Right. Not he's amazing and they already have a steal because we're 6 days into training camp and he hasn't run against a real defense yet. And that's how running backs work in training camp. So not trying to put a wet blanket on anything, unless you're like thinking that they drafted a Hall of Famer in the 7th round already, and because you don't. But I am definitely excited to see him in the preseason. All right, let's talk about this defense here to wrap up on Take Command. Take Command podcast. Craig Hoffman here. Logan Paulsen there. Observations from Commanders training camp on the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line, Logan. This was the unit with probably the most intrigue coming into the year, and then they signed Von Miller. So we've added some even more of like, what's this going to look like? And it sounds like from most of the reports so far, pretty good. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is just a bunch of different body types on the defensive line, and the guys that came in to like stop the run, for example, like your Dietrich Wises, who again I think could be a good pass rusher also, or a serviceable pass rusher. Your Goldmans, even your Kinlaws, for example, like they've kind of done what they're supposed to do. Like you feel Goldman, like you feel his quick hands, you feel that first step, you feel him sitting double teams. You see Dietrich Wise, like today, I don't know who he was going against. He like absolutely blasted the tight end. Like, one of those ones where it's like, as a tight end, I've been in this moment where you're like, this is bad. I don't feel good because his hands are in your chest and you can't quite get him fit because he's a longer, taller guy than you. And
you still get like shivers when you're on that on the sideline. Like you just like kind of have flashbacks as PTSD.
I'm like, damn, that's not good. And I've felt that. I know what that feels like. Yeah. So, and those guys are doing what they're supposed to do. I think you've seen like the flashes from Kinlaw are great. And he's been a little bit more consistent than I thought he was going to be. Like there are times where he's treetop tall, he's looking over the block and he gets double teamed out of the spot. But I think his athleticism, his work rate is much better and more consistent than I thought it would be. And he does flash. And you pair that with some of the guys on the edge, your Holmes is right. His ability to kind of do what Dietrich does, right? Your Jacob Martin, like his ability to set an edge. And then like their ability to run and pursue is also really high. So like, they had a play today where they were running like a GT, which is like, you pull the guard and tackle, you block down on the front side of the run. And I was like, oh man, they got a crease here. And Drazan did a great job of fighting off the center, playing over the top, and would have made a tackle for loss. Like, even though the crease, like from where I was standing, looked like it was there. So they're just being really active, really aggressive. And some of those additions that were kind of sleeper free agent moves feel like they're starting to kind of fit into those roles. And again, obviously guys like Duran, like you feel his pop, you feel his burst. So I think there's a lot of things to be excited about, specifically on the interior, but like on first and second down, I was like, man, this is a fun group. And then when you get to third down, just how they're marrying that with Frankie as like a spinner or like the pressure package. And then you know that Vaughn's going to win on one. Shoot, Dorrance Armstrong, man. Holy cow. Like, I didn't even talk about him, but like he has flashed every single day. He's flashed every single day, rushing the passer or finishing the football or whatever. And I just feel like that dude's poised for a big year. So like he was on what was the first day of pads? That was yesterday? Was that
yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah. He was in a 2-point stance over the guard. They ran a pressure. He gets a 1-on-1. Quick win, and would have been a sack, you know? And so like, just love seeing these guys find their roles, find their opportunities, and then fill those roles at a high level.
Yeah, for sure. One of the last things I did before I left and took off the radio show the last couple of days is we did a 53. Dude, doing the D line 53 is a nightmare. Like there's just too many dudes. Like I think we wound up like cutting Jacob Martin and like one other guy who you just mentioned somewhere in there, but playing really well. Like there's just too, like, it's great. And I think obviously there's something to be said about still the lack of a stud, like A-level player, unless Jerzon develops into that. Obviously Vaughn used to be that, but is not at this stage in his career. You're hoping he can be in the limited snaps, but to be that true, like, all-pro caliber, you need to be that on a more consistent basis, more than 15 to 20 snaps a game. But the depth that they have is fantastic, and the roles that they need to fit, I think it's going to set them up to be pretty good this year on that front. When you talk about Jerzon specifically, like Payne's another guy you didn't mention in there. Like Payne, I think obviously needs to be, he needs to be really good. But like, how much more developed does Jerzon look in year 2 compared to obviously training camp last year? We didn't even see him, but like when he got started to work in at the beginning of last year, but especially by the end of last year, like, have you seen a jump in his game, or is he kind of picking up where he left off?
It feels to me like he's kind of picking up where he left off a little bit, and it's interesting watching him next to Kinlaw, next to Payne, next to Goldman. Like, you feel those guys when they're on the field; they feel the physicality in a little bit of a different way, and I think he's still kind of find his way a little bit. You know what I mean? And that's not a bad thing. I just think he's he's still developing.
Perfectly reasonable for a second-year guy in his first ever training camp.
Yeah, still learning. And so like today he made that nice play on the GT, which was awesome. But like, I'd say he's been relatively quiet. But again, like, it's hard to watch the defensive tackles, right? Through kind of the mesh of everything. And you're like, well,
from a sideline view.
Yeah. And Kinlaw like flashes because he's big and he runs fast. You're like, oh, what's that? Or like Duran, for example, like you feel when he snaps that guard, like you can see it. Right. And so like those things pop out to you, but like, you know, you're kind of watching the coverage, you're watching the linebackers, you're kind of feeling that defensive line when you're looking through. So I don't want to make any like definitive declarative statements about where Jerzon's at, but to me, he feels like he's kind of on pace from where he was last year. Hopefully he continues to improve. And again, when the preseason comes around, like, I think he could make some splash plays, which would be really exciting.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we got a much better feel then. All right, to the linebacker level. You mentioned Madrano with the pick.
Yeah.
Obviously, you feel like Bobby's probably still Bobby Wagner. I know Luvu's been all over the place. What have you seen from the usage and kind of how – I think we're deep enough now that we have an idea of some of the pairings and some of the roles of how they want to use those guys at the second level, even if they are far from finalized.
Yeah, man, that group is like so much fun to watch. Like I just it's a joy like to watch. Just again, you get Bob, you get Frankie, and Frankie's kind of used in like these pass rush roles. He'll blitz a little bit, like, you know, kind of the roles you'd expect. And Bobby's Bobby, and like they were kind of giving him like a pseudo vet day. Felt like he wasn't taking all the reps. So Jordan McGee, Dominique Hampton, and Kane got a lot of reps today. And I mean, those dudes are like little pit bull puppies, man, fighting over a bone, dude. They are motivated. They're all athletic. They all run well. They've all got great physicality. Like, you know, Jordan McGee had a great pass rush today where he's like dipping the edge and ripping under the tackle and, you know, running down the running back on the next play. And then Dominique Hampton had a great like A-gap pressure where he kind of walks the guard back and stops like right in front of the quarterback. Probably would have been a sack. Or walks the running back. And then Kane, obviously, with the pick. And then just all of those dudes are like their ability to cover backs and slot receivers and tight ends is pretty special. Now, a guy that you just made me think of it because we're talking about Kane, like Kane had some really great one-on-one matchups today with Colson Yankoff, because obviously Tyree Jackson's out, like he hurt his shoulder, so didn't practice today. But Colson Yankoff, man, like runs this choice. Kane, I don't know how he did it, undercuts it, almost it picks it off, right? Then next series or earlier in the practice, Colson's running a corner, catches it, Kane's underneath, tags him off, but would have been a catch. So a guy that I just wanted to shout out from the offense because we missed him. But that kind of backup linebacker group, man, is just fun to watch, because they're great athletes, they're long, they're crazy fast, they can all play the football really well. And that's going to be really interesting to see who kind of finds a home and settles in. Yeah,
it's cool to see that the things that we thought could happen are. Also, that little brief segment from Logan brought to you by UCLA. That was Logan's Bruins Corner. Oh, look, the two UCLA guys are going against each other. I wonder why Logan mentioned that one. When you look at the secondary, Owens has been kind of the story of camp, I feel like, in that he's doing more than people anticipated. And obviously, that kind of happens this time of year where the talking points are what happens relative to expectation versus like, oh, this guy's actually been the best player. It's just like, oh, that guy's surprising. Right. We're looking for things that we didn't expect. So beyond Owens, what has stood out to you? Obviously, I think we should check in on Lattimore. Sainristil's name, I feel like, has come up a lot. So how are we feeling about a group that I felt like had the most volatility, a chance to be really good if some of the pieces worked out, but also the group that kind of scared me the most defensively as we were entering camp?
Yeah, and so today I thought with Tyler Owens, because like you mentioned him first, like he kind of went back to more of a traditional safety role, and Kevon Seymour was kind of that big nickel guy. He is a big dude, man. He's very, very tall. Yeah. Anyway, so just kind of like you were talking about, they're kind of shifting roles, trying new things out. That's awesome. Their dime package today was a lot of fun to watch because they had Harris at the nickel. They had, Mikey Harris at the dime, Mikey at the nickel, then Percy and Quan in the back end. They can cover a lot of grass with that group, man. And just are some good football players. So, like you were talking about, I think this is the group actually that's driven training camp because of their ability to cover and disguise stuff, right? So like we mentioned kind of the 4 starting safety type players there, like even Revo, man, like when he's on the field, like you hear him, you feel his experience, you feel his communication. And it's just been a much deeper group than I would have anticipated, like, I don't know if it's the second year in the defense, but they're just sharp. They're just sharp with the communication. They're sharp with the alignments. They're sharp with the positions. Like, Sainristil, man, he had a one-handed interception yesterday, or was that yesterday? Yeah, where he like jumps up, like Odell Beckham's the ball and comes down with it. Like his ball skills are tremendous, and you're starting to feel that from the rest of the group. Trey Amos today had a great PBU on him and Luke McCaffrey battling, and she's just in Luke's pocket. Go and then like the classic Benjamin St. Juice, like where's the ball? Like nope, look up, play the ball, knock that thing down. Like the most routine play of all time, even though it's really challenging. So I think all those guys, to me, that's the story of camp, right? Is not just Tyler Owens, it's the entire secondary, how well they've played, how competitive they are, right? Like Marshawn Lattimore looks great, to my opinion, right? Like competitive, tough, strong, instinctive. You see the burst, you see the intuition. So again, like, there's no like true number one receiver out there right now. Noah Brown's had a pretty good day. Like when Noah's out there, you feel Noah's burst, but Marshawn Lattimore was in his hip pocket today on a go ball. And it would have been a tough catch, for Noah, but Marshawn's right there, does a great job kind of making the catch even tougher. So I can't say enough good things about how well that second group has played, like even the guys down the line, like Ben Nichols, the angle he's taken to running backs, the way he's playing man coverage. McDaniel, is that the guy's name from the UDFA, number 47? I'm messing it up.
I'll look.
Yeah. But like he had a nice play today where he they were trying to throw a seam, makes a break on the ball, PBU. Like, I don't know if it's coaching, and maybe you got to give coaching credit. Maybe it's the second year in the system. Maybe they simplified rules, but that group looks insanely confident at the moment.
Love that. And 47, Robert McDaniel out of Jackson State. I guess the last question I'll ask to wrap up here, and this might be a tough one, and you might say we got to wait till the preseason, but the run defense is the thing that matters. Like all this pass stuff is nice, and would rather it go the way it's going than be like, oh,
Really,
they're a
you would? You'd
nightmare.
rather that?
No one's talking to each other except for to say, hey man, what happened? Like, we don't want that. But we know that the big defensive focus this offseason, based off of the results of last year, was rightfully the run defense. Are we still in too early to tell category, or are we starting to see some improvement in team run on how the defense is scheming that up and ultimately executing that scheme?
I think you're starting to see guys who are more consistently winning one-on-ones, you know, like in the run game. Like that was something that people didn't talk about last year, is guys just losing those opportunities. And like when we were good, guys won one-on-ones, and we were bad, guys didn't win one-on-ones. And that's because they're not
Funny how that works.
Not playing the right technique, they're not in the right position, whatever it is, right? So I do think you feel them a little bit more. You feel their urgency, you feel their size, you feel their physicality, specifically on the defensive line. Because again, like when that group's playing well, like Bobby, man, like, you know, he's going to fit the run, right? You know what I mean? Like he's going to be in the right position if that group's doing a good job. So as of right now, I feel optimistic that it's much better. But again, that's one of the things where it's like, is that real? Like we're not tackling to the ground, right? So it's like, are you going to make that play, or are we not going to make that play? Is that too wide? Is that a bad angle? Like this looks like a good fit, but maybe it's not. And like, so just a good example of that today was like Jacory Croskey-Merritt had a run on, it was a power. I think it was a power, maybe a trap, where they're pulling the left guard of the offense. And usually that run's going to hit in the right A gap, but he's like really patient, kind of winds it back and squirts out the left A gap. And I'm like, I don't know if a defensive lineman tackled him, but there looks like there's a lot of air there. That looks like it's like a 6 or 7 yard gain at a minimum, maybe a longer play. So there's stuff like that because there's no wrap up tackle. So yes, I think it's better. The consistency, I think, will reveal itself in the joint practice and in the preseason.
Yeah, and if you look at the missed tackle numbers for the D-line last year, like that was a pretty significant part of that as well. So the ability to actually finish it, we're going to have to wait for real game action to see. But we are scarily close to real game action. We have 10 days, I think, till the first preseason game. So we will obviously preview what we want to see and kind of who we think is going to play towards the tail end of next week. Or maybe we might shift around the schedule around that. So we'll figure that out. Probably getting close to a first 53 roster projection as well on our show.
Everyone's doing those now, and people are like, I'm like, we haven't even watched a preseason game yet. How are we supposed to? But
I think it's nice to understand kind of some of the, how close are we to, if there's no injuries, knowing how many guys are still in contention.
Dude, I think a lot of guys, man, and it's because guys have played well. You know what I mean?
When we say a lot, there's 90, they got to get to 53. Is a lot 63? Is a lot 73? Is a lot 58? When you really start making those cuts, how many guys are really in consideration? I think that's a fun exercise. So maybe we'll do that next week.
Okay.
And obviously, if we don't do it next week, we'll do it ASAP after the first preseason game, because that actually probably feels more appropriate. But we're doing a podcast. We do what we want. That's Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman. I'll be back on the radio Friday. We'll also have the RFK stuff to follow the next couple of days as well. City council meetings are happening, and then the vote is Friday. So we should know the fate of the Commanders' future home by Friday. So we might talk about that a little bit next week on the show as well. So we'll keep an eye on that, on the Terry stuff, and obviously what's happening on the field. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy this, then subscribe. Because that's what you should do, so you don't miss it, because you like it. Remember, that's where that sentence started. Okay, that's where the sentence started. This is where the podcast ends. I'm going to stop rambling. Goodbye.